like to welcome you all and say thank you so much for attending this important conversation on the success of women in Washington. This is the culminating event of the district's celebration of March as Women's History Month, and I really can't imagine a better way to round out the month's activities than to celebrate three sisters in our midst that have achieved truly admirable levels of success. This evening's event is sponsored by the Executive Office of Mayor Vincent C. Gray, in partnership with the District of Columbia Office of Boards and Commissions and the Office on Women's Policy. And I must give a special thanks to Daryl Gorman, Director of the Office on Boards and Commissions, whose fabulous idea it was to have this event. Thank you, Daryl, for bringing us all together this evening. This event highlights the many significant contributions that women have made to our society, expanding our economy as entrepreneurs and business leaders, guiding our youth as parents and teachers, preserving our health as nurses, physicians, and scientists, creating new opportunities as advocates, philanthropists, and heads of nonprofit and community-based organizations, comprising nearly half of our workforce and the majority of students in our colleges and universities, and serving at the highest levels of government. Women have made these contributions despite real barriers like gender-based discrimination and historic inequities rooted deep in the cultural and political foundation of this nation. To address such inequities, the District of Columbia Commission for Women was established in 1978 to advise the mayor in developing strategies to enhance the status of women and girls. And we have our Director of the Commission for Women here this evening, the chair, Nona Richardson. And through the efforts of organizations like the Commission for Women and of strong and determined women like those on our panel, tremendous progress has been made in the struggle for gender-based equality in access to education, fair compensation, opportunities for professional leadership, and overall civil rights. The women honored here this evening have made specific contributions to such progress here in Washington. Barbara Lang, Dr. Johnnetta Cole, and Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis have all shown ingenuity, intellectual capacity, courage, character, and commitment to making a difference. They've managed business in the boardroom while taking care of business at home, all while continuing to participate in important social and human rights-related causes and giving back to their communities. Through their work, tonight's panel has improved the district's understanding of what women and girls can do and how much we can truly achieve when provided the necessary support and opportunities to reach our full potential. This work is certainly worthy of celebration, and tonight we are here to do just that. So I will pass the mic along to our illustrious moderator for the evening, Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis.
Thank you, Therese. Good evening, everyone. What a wonderful group of women this is that have assembled here this evening to talk about the success of women in Washington, D.C. And I am delighted to be a stand-in, if you will, for Mayor Gray, who was to moderate, and he will be here, but I'm excited about the opportunity of being able to be here and to hear from you as you exchange questions and ideas with members of our panel, a very distinguished panel of women who themselves can recognize that description of women who are courageous with character and commitment, and that, I think, goes for many of you who are in this audience, women of courage, character, and commitment. So I'm very pleased to be able to acknowledge all of you and to bring to the stage, if you will, these women. I'm going to go back the other way here. You have Barbara Lang, astounding Barbara Lang, and you have astounding Johnnetta Cole. Dr. Cole, before assuming her current position, had a long and distinguished career as an educator and humanitarian. Through her work as a college president, university professor, and through her published works, speeches, and community service, she has consistently addressed racial, gender, and all forms of inequality. Dr. Cole served as president of Spelman College and Bennett College for Women. She is the only person to have served as president of these two historically black colleges for women in the United States. She is also Professor Emerita of Emory University, from which she retired as Presidential Distinguished Professor of Anthropology, Women's Studies, and African American Studies. Let's give her a round of applause and ask if she will come to the stage. It is my wonderful pleasure to introduce to have you reacquainted with Barbara Lang. Barbara Lang, as you know, is the chair of the District of Columbia Chamber of Commerce. She has had a wonderful, distinguished career, and today, this very day, is the very last day of her 11-year tenure at the Chamber, at the District of Columbia Chamber of Commerce. And so we are pleased to have her on this very special and somewhat emotional day when she leaves behind not only staff, but a legacy at the Chamber of Commerce. And so we are delighted that she is here today. Our panelists have something in common. They both come from Jacksonville, Florida. And so I'm now going to go up and begin, and here's what we would like very much to do. We're going to have a dialogue with these two extraordinary women, and we want to make sure that you're a part of that dialogue. So I'm going to start by asking a question, and I'm going to get you to think about what you want to ask, because, you know, as we get let me say, seasoned. It is very clear that what we can do in interacting with you is to talk about some of the things that we've learned. And as we become more seasoned, we have very consolidated thoughts about that. So it's really a pleasure for me to be able to be a part of this and moderate this today. I want to ask these distinguished ladies one very important question that they can think about with respect to you and your careers, and what is really one of the most important things that you think that a group of women who are obviously moving along in their careers can do as next steps in their thinking about their careers. In other words, if you distill it down to one thing which you think is critical for success, what would that be? Barbara?
Well, I guess I will start, and I would say you need to always act like you belong. Always act like you, and for the next job, you act like you're already there, and always conduct yourself in that way.
Well, before I respond, I simply want to turn to our sister Barbara Lang and say, you know, you need to leave when people still want you to stay. And your tenure at the Chamber, it's really legendary. We wish you all kinds of wonderful new adventures.
Thank you very much.
Now, Sister President, to your question. I loved your answer, by the way. And I am going to respond in a similar way. I think every woman should have dreams that are so big that they scare her. These are words of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman president of an African nation. She said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. Same idea. Feel that you belong there, and then dream the biggest possible dreams and make them come true.
I've heard Barbara Lang say exactly the same thing. She has termed it BHAG.
That's right.
A big, hairy, audacious goal.
That's right.
So I think that these ladies are saying the same thing. And a lot of it has to do with what you think about yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I have just heard. In your careers, you have had those kinds of reaches in your thinking, where you wanted to be, what you wanted to do. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Well, you know, I have been surprised by what has happened. I'd like to think I was prepared, but still surprised. And I think that each of us, especially as women, need to be prepared to confront that surprise and grab a hold of it. I was a really happy professor. I mean, it was my life. I loved being a professor. But two women who to this very day are my mentors got on either side of me. Marion Wright Edelman on one side and Donna Shalala on the other. And they said to me, you will apply for the presidency of Spelman College. I was a happy professor. But I think the willingness to step out there in a way that you're about to do, although this is no risk. All this advice you've been giving other businesses.
We'll see if I can take the advice.
Listen to yourself. So that's really my reaction, Sister President. And then finally, just to say, it wasn't a surprise. It was an outrageous notion that I should come out of retirement for the third time and become the director of a Smithsonian museum? I'm going back to what we said a moment ago. Taking the risk, assuming you belong, and dreaming big.
We have something else in common, because I don't do retirement well either. I retired from IBM. I retired from Fannie Mae. And so retirement just is not in the genes.
We get F-minuses.
That's exactly right. I would say, to respond to the question, about a week ago, I was pleased to receive an honor, and I made some remarks. And one of the things that I said was, I attribute a lot of what I have done and who I am to my mother, who certainly is not with us anymore. But one of the things, and this was to a group of minority leaders, this was the Washington Business Journal's Minority Leaders Awards event. And one of the things I said is that in growing up, I was always taught that I had to be better than my white colleagues. I had to be smarter. I had to work harder. I had to play the game better, and nobody told me what the rules of the game were. And so, but I had to know how to do that. And I had to dress better. And the other thing I said to the audience was, because Mom didn't have to tell me that, because I've always been kind of a clothes horse anyway, so she didn't need to tell me that. But it was always that I had to be better than. And to this day, that message still resonates with me, that at the chamber, I had to be the best chamber president that this country could ever have. I had to achieve more. When we started out, when I started, and I might say that Charlene Drew Jarvis hired me. She was the chair of the D.C. Chamber of Commerce at the time. And we were woefully underperforming. We had membership was very low. And one of the things that I did after getting our finances in straight in that first year was to set that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal. And that was to bring the Chamber's membership to 2,000 members. And I said it publicly. And those of you that know Alex Orfinger at the Business Journal, he wrote about it. And so I said, okay, there's no backing out now, because it is public that we're going to get there. And Alex called me every month for a year to see where we're there. And on December 31st at 5:30 that evening, I called him and said, we did it. We're 203 members. We got 3 to spare. But that's the kind of thing that you got to be better. Nobody else was doing that. You got to be smarter, and you got to know how to play the game a lot better than anybody else.
And so you are in professions that have been historically male-dominated: heads of business organizations, presidents of universities, presidents of museums. And have you, in the course of your career, seen changes in the way you are viewed or accepted by your male colleagues? Cool.
I will use language that I used in that article in the Washington Post that looked at women who are museum directors in Washington. And what I said about that particular profession, I would say in general for women: progress, yes. Victory, absolutely not. If one is seasoned, then clearly we have seen changes. Yes. Whether we want to record this by the number of women in leadership positions, even if we want to talk about the sensitivity, if not the eradication, the sensitivity to horrific experiences that women have: domestic violence, rape. But can we say that we have arrived at a point of gender equity? Absolutely not. And I also feel compelled to say that while we are using the very inclusive term of women, and there are so many ways in which women share experiences, we need to also remember that if you have seen one woman, you have not seen us all. And the experiences of our white sisters are often not the same as the experiences of women of color. And if we talk about the experiences of women of color, white women, they may not be the same experiences of our sisters who are lesbians. So I want us to keep being inclusive and feel that strength of sisterhood, but we've got to be realistic and also understand that when you are woman and black and perhaps not a heterosexual and poor, you got a hard road to hoe.
Barbara.
I think that I agree with my sister Johnnetta. We've made a lot of progress, but we are not there yet. And even to this day, though it does not happen nearly as much as it did early in my career, and I'm sure that some of you have experienced it. You're sitting in a meeting, you're with male colleagues, you make a suggestion, nobody responds, right? I see some heads shaking. And the white guy sitting over there says the same thing, and they're, oh, yes, that's a wonderful idea. And I will say, because I will not be dismissed, excuse me, didn't I just say that? And if you have to do that, and you have to call them on it every single time. Do not allow yourselves to be diminished or dismissed.
Well, because we really want to have a conversation here, I'm going to stop and take a few questions, and then I'll come back. But you've heard a lot of very interesting things today, and I just talked about the men in your professional lives, but let me acknowledge that the men in our personal lives are here.
Yes.
And I want the husbands of the three ladies, please, to stand and be acknowledged, because they have all come to be supportive. There's Gerald in the back. Johnnetta, wonderful husband of mine who just stood up toward the front. And Johnnetta and I have something in common, which is that we are both relative newlyweds.
So when you all have been married as long as Gerald, we have been married 52 years. So I want you to top that.
So the answer is that you can have a mate and be happy in your career. So we talked about a few things now. Are there questions that you want to put to either of our wonderful panelists? Yes.
Hi, good afternoon.
Want to stand up and identify yourself?
My name is Asita Duncan, and my question to the panel, I've read somewhere that the person we become is based on the books we've read and the people we associate with. How important has your network been to your success?
Barbara?
I think that it's very important. I think reading everything you can is critical. So you want to make sure that you're well learned on a whole bunch of subjects. I think your contemporaries being and expanding those networks, but it's also learning how to use a network. And then I think the third piece I would put in there, if I looked at who was a role model coming up, it's not any one person. I took a little bit of this person and a little bit of that person and a little bit of somebody else, and I kind of rolled it into one person that has somehow become me. So I think you take a lot of things, but expand your networks and learn how to network. If you go to a networking event and you just run around and pass out business cards, those are all going to end up in the trash can. So you target, when you go to a networking event, you target 3 or 4 people that you really want to get to know. And I think that, and those people will know other people. So that is the way you expand that network. Look at organizations that have the people in it that you want to be like or associate with or get some business with, and target those organizations to get to those people. So I think there's a variety of ways that you would go about doing that.
Madam President, you have to network to raise money all of the time.
Yes. There's little I could add to what Sister Barbara has said, but I do want to suggest that while we may not have overwhelming scientific evidence, we have an enormous amount of day-to-day experience that tells us that women will often both lead and respond differently than men. Mm-hmm. And that we will tend to be more collaborative, mm-hmm. that we will tend to seek the opinions of others. And those are wonderful attributes when put into the mix with what Barbara has described as really, she just gave you the techniques to use, suggests that any woman has the potential of just soaring to the height of her possibilities. There's an African proverb that I'm thinking of now that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. It's that idea of collaboration, of sisterhood, of mentoring, of networking, all of those notions that say fundamentally that you're not on this journey by yourself.
Good. Are there other questions? Yes. Would you stand and identify yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiana Etzes. I am a freshman at Howard University. My question is, what has the journey to your current position in life taught you about yourself?
Madam President?
You sure you're only a fresh woman? The question is really very deep. It really is a wonderful question. You're asking us not simply to celebrate where we are, but to share what we have learned about ourselves. I think the most fundamental thing that this journey that I am still on teaches me is that I really have a loyal scorn for inequality, for oppression, for discrimination. And while I've done different things and been so privileged to have different jobs or careers, that's really at the base of it. A belief that that town that we grew up in, with those signs that kept telling us no matter what, we were second best, all it did was make us commit to working against that obscene idea. And then finally, I would say that the journey has taught me the importance of relationships. That's another word we didn't use as we talked about networking and sisterhood and being collaborative. Relationships. One that I have that's grounded in my faith. A relationship that I have with my family, with James David Staten Jr., who stood up back there. Relationships with my sisters. Relationships that I still have with my Spellman sisters and my Bennett Bells. And so it's taught me to never accept concepts or realities or practices of inequality. And it's also taught me that life is so much richer when we have beautiful relationships.
Terrific. The mayor has come in, and I want to acknowledge him, but I think we really do want to hear Barbara talk about what she's learned about herself.
Well, I think the challenge with inequality is certainly one of those. And since Johnnetta and I are from the same hometown, she will remember a five and dime store in Jacksonville, Florida called Cress. And I used to go to a private school, and I would take the bus across town, and I would always stop at Cress to get something. And there was the water fountain there. Some of you that are old enough may remember this, that there was a white water fountain, and there was one for colored people. And just bugged me because I thought there was Kool-Aid in that white fountain, that there was something else that they would get. And so I would go to that fountain and I would sneak to see and get a sip to see that they get something a little bit different. So the inequality is clearly one of the things. I think the second thing that I've learned, and maybe some of you would be surprised if you know me now but didn't know me before, that I was a little shy little colored girl from Jacksonville, Florida. But there was just something in me trying to get out. And so I became, my husband and my daughter would say, this monster of probably not my husband, but my daughter would certainly say that. And there was something trying to get out, and I just needed to be able to do that. So, and then the scorn that I have for inefficiency and somebody that's just dumb, that just does dumb things. And, you know, periodically in my world of what I do at the Chamber of Commerce, you do run into that every day. So that's it, Madam President.
The mayor has characteristically said that he would like to listen. And so what we're going to do is have the opportunity of continuing to hear from you and from our panelists. So I'm going to take another question in second row. Yes, would you stand and give us your name?
Good evening. My name is Faith Hubbard, and I'm also a new mother. And so my question comes from that place. How did you learn to balance family and motherhood, which is just all-consuming to me at this moment with my 3-month-old, and trying to work on my PhD and continuing to move forward in my career. How do you learn how to balance that at different times? Because you might start and you think you have it balanced, and then you move on and you realize you don't have a balance. How did you figure out how to balance that with motherhood, family, and your career?
You want me to try that first? Well, congratulations, first of all. You have an awesome task in front of you. I'm not sure I could do that today, but years ago, I have one daughter, and that's probably why I have just one child, because I wasn't sure that I could balance it all. You know, I will have to say the man that I've been married to in the back of the room was incredible support for me, and I'm not sure that I could have pulled off what we pulled off together if it were not a true partnership. From picking up my daughter, from making sure she was fine. We always made sure, we both traveled a lot in those early years, and that none of us were ever out of town at the same time. We made sure of that she always had one parent at home. And so I think and the other thing I did, all the promotions I got in IBM and then in Fannie Mae, I didn't realize any money from that because I paid dearly for somebody, you know, a service to pick her up from school, to take her to ballet. And so those were some sacrifices that we made along the way. But I would have to say, the partnership, and I didn't have family support because we moved to Atlanta from Jacksonville when my daughter was about 18 months old. So there was no family in Atlanta that could help. So it was my husband and I will just have to thank you so much because he helped me get through all of that. Yeah.
Madam President.
There's a wonderful line in a Langston Hughes poem that says, I dream a world, and then he goes on to share the dream. Well, I dream a world where a woman does not have to figure out how to juggle, how to balance, how to give up in order to have. I dream a world where services like daycare, like after-school programs, are simply accessible to every woman and every man. Let's not assume, and affordable. Let's not assume that it is only women who raise their children. My husband was for many years a single parent. He raised Jeffrey Staten from the time he was 8 years old. And so I dream a world where whether a man raising a child, a woman raising a child, two people together raising a child, where the services in that city, in that town, in that neighborhood support the raising of that child and those children. To do less is really to court suicide. Children are the only future that we have. We have to learn and to practice how to take really, really, really good care of the only future that we have.
That is actually a very good answer to have given while the mayor was here. Because, of course, we're talking about those kinds of services, and he will talk about the early childhood education and other ways in which he supports those young people. Can we have another question? Yes, I'm going to go way in the back.
Hi, my name is Terry Janine Quinn, and I'd like to hear your advice on overcoming fear and doubt.
Is that enough? Oh, can you talk a little bit about what that means? You mean in the workplace or taking on new new
I really meant in the
positions?
context of dreaming big and having opportunities come to you that you weren't expecting, and that fear that comes about, am I really ready? Am I equipped? Can I do this? So I'd like to hear how you've dealt with that kind of fear and how best we might deal with it.
Great. Barbara?
You're always going to have some doubts and some fear. I don't care how experienced you are, how well seasoned you are with the gray hair that we both have. But I think the way you get beyond that is you kind of put that aside in a part of your body. I'm getting ready to start a new firm. And do you think I'm not a little scared about doing that? Everybody is saying to me, oh, you're going to make boatload of money. I don't have a single contract yet. And I've got 5 other people to pay and rent to pay. And so you've got to put that doubt aside and say, I can do this. I have been prepared very, very well. I know how good I am in certain things. And I'm saying what you should say to yourself. And if there are areas that you don't feel quite as prepared, go get that and go talk to somebody that has done it and make sure that you get as prepared. And then go jump out there and just do it. You're always going to be scared. There will always be some doubts, but you'll never know if you can do it until you try. What is it? Nothing beats a failure but a try, or something like that. You need to just go do it.
Well, Madam President, have you ever been afraid?
Of course. And anybody who says that they have never experienced fear, I really think they're not telling the truth. I had an experience when I was a young woman about to go off to the country of Liberia to do the field work. That's what an anthropologist does to get a PhD. I was so scared because I knew that when I got to Liberia and started to do my field work, there would be chickens everywhere. And I have a phobia that goes back to the days when in Jacksonville, Florida, a whole lot of black families like mine, we had chickens. And a ferocious rooster attacked me one day. So here I am about to go off to Liberia to do field work, to get my PhD, and I am trembling because those chickens are going to be there. One of the fellow anthropology graduate students was a psychiatrist who had come back into a school situation because he was interested in psychiatry cross-culturally. I went to him shaking and I said, put me on the couch, do whatever you have to do, but I'm scared to death of those chickens. He said to me something I want to share with you. He said, first of all, I'm not putting you on the couch. You're probably the most sane one among us. But he said, I want you to listen and hear what fear is. He said, fear is the inability to put yourself in a situation to learn that there's nothing to fear. And that's why Barbara said, just do it. So I got up all of my courage to just go to Liberia. I'm almost done with this story. I get off the plane. I'm so excited. I can't wait. And I just said, I've got to go to a market. Even before we get into town, I got to go to a market. Well, as I walk into the market, it's pretty clear that the way I'm dressed, the way I'm carrying myself, that I'm an American. And I'm walking around, and here's the market part where peanuts are sold. And over here, there are tomatoes. And over here, there are tin goods. And the next thing I know, I am in the middle of the chicken market. And all of the market women start pushing their chickens into my face. What do you think I did? I fainted. So the big bad anthropologist fainted. But I want to end by telling you the truth, which is I never did like those chickens that were running around in the village. But by the end of the 2 years, I could at least sit in the evening as we all came back from the fields or wherever, and I didn't embarrass myself. Put yourself in a situation to learn that there's nothing to fear.
And so if there are chicken and roosters in your environment, metaphorically speaking, then what you want to do is be comfortable among the chickens and the roosters and know that you can do it. Right? Other questions? Yes. In the white sweater. Thank you, and your name?
Sandra, how are you? How many times have you ladies reinvented yourself
Good question.
during the course of your career? And can you expand on that a little bit?
That's a great question. How many times have you reinvented yourself, Barbara, and which one will this be?
Probably, I would say it's a great question. I'm just going back into and looking at all the careers. This will be kind of career number 4 for me. And probably for each one of those, the skill sets that I needed for that new job. When I was in IBM, and I did a lot of stuff in IBM because I was there for 25 years, but a very different environment. And then I went to Fannie Mae as an officer, and financial organization, really dealing with investment bankers and Wall Street and all of that. Almost, I don't want to say cutthroat environment, but pretty close, as financial environments are. And so I did that for 10 years, and then I came to the chamber, and where it is very externally focused. My previous background had all been internally focused. And so I really had to look at how was I going to meet everybody in town, and how was I going to learn what to do at the city council. And Charlene was a great teacher for me. And now I am probably reinventing myself now as an entrepreneur. And I just joined a corporate board, which was also one of my goals. And I really couldn't do that at the chamber because they were all my members, and I couldn't choose one member over the other. And so now that I'm not there, I did join last month Cardinals board. And so I'm reinventing myself, even just looking at a bank's financial statements, very different than anything else I have ever had to do before. And so I'm now looking for contracts, people that want to hire me and my team. I've not done that before, and I've always had to sell in some way. So I would say maybe 4 times. This is probably the 4th time I'm going about doing this. Yeah.
And so, Madam President, you went from professor to president to the museum, and there are some skill sets that you could transfer one to the other as you reinvented yourself.
True. But first, I want to do a praise song for a good, solid education.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because if that is there, you can make small and even dramatic changes in your career. Because what you learn with a good, solid, liberal arts education, you learn the most fundamental things. You learn how to think. Yep. You learn how to speak well, how to write concisely and convincingly. You learn with a good liberal arts education about your own self, your own people, and the people of the world. And so I think there's no advice we could ever give that's more important than a good education is what you must do. One of my sheroes, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune said for her time what we have to continue to say. And she said, knowledge is the prime need of the hour. And so for anyone, but particularly those of us, I'm going back to Barbara's language that her mom used, because my mom used it too, particularly for those of us who've got to be twice as good to get half as far, a good education is going to help to get you there.
So many of these women in the audience are not going to be in a career, they're on a career path that is going to change frequently. In our generation, we went into positions and we stayed for periods of time. You ladies have been really different in that respect,
Atypical,
because you've been atypical, because you've changed those professions over time, and you've moved from one to the other to the other to the other that require different skill sets. But many of these young women are going to go 8 or 9 times in their careers to a new position. What advice do you have for the young women that are moving from position to position to position today?
In terms of
what
skill
advice
sets they need?
In terms of skill sets, in terms of how frequently they want to move, in terms of what they look for when they want to move, what is it they are they goal directed when they move? Do they have continuity of training that they're looking for? Is it serendipitous what they do, or are they really planning? So, yeah, those kind of questions.
Well, I would start out by first saying you've got to have a plan. You need to know what is it. If you don't know where you're going to end up someplace else. You need to kind of lay out where you'd like to be in 10 years or where you want to be in 15 years. And so I think that is incredibly important. I think changing jobs every 2 years is not okay. You need to stay a little bit longer. And when you start to change, don't change just to be changing. That this is a notch on the ladder of this next job is going to get you someplace else. It's 2 miles down the road of your 10-mile journey. The third thing that I would say that so many women have not focused on in large numbers, but I would suggest, and I didn't, and I pay for that. It's harder for me in some of these areas. You got to get a great financial background. You need to know how to read a balance sheet, a P&L, look at cash flows. You need to do that. That's critically important. Whether you're going to be an entrepreneur, whether you're in corporate America, whether you're running a nonprofit, whether you are in Vince Gray's government, you need to be able to read budgets and really understand the financials. The second thing that I would say is that get very good at technology. There's no place that you can go now. I don't care what the profession is, that you don't need, and I don't mean just doing email and looking at your iPhone and your BlackBerry, but you really need to get good in technology, and because it permeates through all careers, and so I think that would be the advice that I would hand out right away.
President.
And I would add to what Sister Barbara has said, the absolute importance of making sure that you have mentors. You know, anybody who has gotten anywhere did not get there by herself. And so as young women move through life, changing jobs and, in fact, changing careers, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that there are mentors there that you can call on. And really, you need more than one. The more you've got, the better. There is something obviously very special when a young African-American woman comes to one of the three of us. seeking mentorship. And there are things that we can tell her, share with her, that are really incredibly important. But you know, there's some other things that a straight white man will be able to share that we can't. And so why shouldn't she have both? Why shouldn't she have the courage to simply approach someone who's already in that new business, that new career, and say, respectfully, I am asking that you be my mentor. And I want to say to you that I believe in reciprocity, that while I will learn from you, I will do my best to share with you. Another African proverb, she who teaches must learn. She who learns must teach. And these young'uns that I'm mentoring, they teach me an enormous amount. Not just about what it is to be young, but what it is to be young in a world that we live in today. I'm totally fascinated by and learning from how young people really do relate to technology. It is dramatically different from the way that we do. I'm learning from the young women that I mentor how their self-definition is really often very different from ours. So I'm saying don't hold back. You've got things to teach. You may be a mentee, but you can teach your mentor.
Do you want to talk a little bit about globalization? That it's part of the world now. You are traveling. You just came back from Nigeria. You're going to Dakar. Barbara, globalization in the business community is very broad and broadening. What should these talented women be thinking about in terms of their knowledge of, respect for, integration with the globalization that's occurring now? Barbara?
Well, certainly I go back to finance and technology because it's hard to get away from that. And that really does rule the world. And that's why you see now when something happens in Europe or something happens in the Middle East, it impacts the U.S. economy, because we're so connected by technology and by all the money that is floating around. So it is critically important that you understand, whether you want to play on that field or not, that you really understand the impact. I think also it is helpful. You know, Americans are fairly arrogant, and most of us don't speak another language. But we need to. We need to learn that. If you look at most Europeans and people they speak 2, 3, 4 languages. I had lunch yesterday with a former boss. He was the president and COO of Fannie Mae. And I always called him the Renaissance man. He left Fannie and became the secretary of the Smithsonian, but has since retired, and that's Larry Small. And he, when I worked for him, spoke 8 languages. 8 languages. And so yesterday, we were just catching up. We hadn't seen each other in a very long time. And he is now learning Italian. And I said, Larry, okay, you're 75 years old. You've already told me that you are doing nothing and doing it very well. You don't want to do anything. Why are you doing this? And he said, well, it's the only Romance language that I don't know, and I wanted to learn that. So now he's speaking pretty fluent Italian. And my point is that I'm not saying you go out and learn 8 languages, but you really ought to understand other cultures very well. And that might be learning a little bit, not only about their culture, but their language and all the things that go on, such that you can relate. I know the mayor has a really big, important international program, and we've been pleased to be a part of that. And one of the things at the Chamber that we've tried to teach, particularly our small businesses, is how do you deal in other lands? How do we get our small businesses prepared to go to Shanghai, to his office, or Beijing there, and being able to do business there? How offensive you can be just by saying hello and making a gesture that in the U.S. is just fine. You go over there and you have just offended the people that you want to do business with. So it is critically important that we learn about other cultures and which are more important and which are having a major impact on the finances of the world.
Well, I'm trained as an anthropologist, so to everything that Barbara has said, I am going to say amen and a women too. You know, nothing teaches and inspires quite like travel. But we can't all get up and go to Singapore or Senegal. But we live in a place called the District of Columbia that has more international presence than any other place, certainly in our country. I mean, just think of the number of embassies. There are 54 African countries, 54 embassies. That's just one continent. One of the things that my hubby and I really, really enjoy about living in Washington is food. I mean, you want to begin to learn about other people? Become a foodie. You know, one of the things that anthropology teaches us is this. It's scarcely the fish who discovers water. If you're a fish and you're just swimming in the water, you know, why should you think about water? It's just there. Get the fish out of the water. The fish will really discover the centrality of water. The point I am making is that the ultimate impact of travel, of eating other folks' foods, of listening to other people's music, of learning other folks' languages, is what it teaches you about yourself. And so, you know, I just want to say, I don't work for the chamber, I don't work for the convention center, but I sure love myself some Washington, D.C. And I want to make a plug for how one can learn at the Smithsonian for free. Yes. For free. I mean, you don't have to pay a dime to go to all of these museums. And of course, the most important one for you to come to is the National Museum of African Art.
Another commercial.
Very fine. And so you see what travel did for Dr. Cole. She's already comfortable with those chickens and roosters. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
She still didn't know it was she. You see, and that's what they meant. That it was you that I was calling upon. And they've already told you how you have to be comfortable and be in the moment, right?
Hi, I'm Andrea Chambers, and my question is, and thank you all, this is so wonderful. What is your purpose, and when did you know it was your purpose?
Miss Barbara. What is that, in life? Your purpose in life, and how did you know? Okay.
You know, I think that, I'm not sure when I knew, but I think that I was put here at some point to help guide, mentor, whether it's individuals, there are young women, and I have several that I mentor, whether it is the business, which is why the chamber really was so attractive to me, because it was a way of my helping businesses in general, but a lot of small businesses in particular, because they needed the help most. And so I've said this many times. I had a great career at IBM. I had a great career at Fannie Mae. The most rewarding experience that I have had was the 12 years that I have spent at the DC Chamber of Commerce, because I could immediately see the progress. Sometimes in corporate America, you don't know whether you've made a difference or not, but we could immediately see how we had moved that ball ahead. So I guess I would say my purpose is to do something like that. And I won't, even though I'm now will be an entrepreneur come next week, I won't stray away from that. I'm still doing some other things that can be helpful to the city's agenda. I'm not leaving Washington, D.C., and so there's a lot more that needs to be done. Right, Mr. Mayor? I can't see you, but I know you're back there someplace. And I still want to contribute in that way, whether that's helping people find work, whether that's helping people to get trained, because that's what this should be all about. Yeah, I want to make money in this new role, but I think that giving back to our city and helping people grow is something that is incredibly important to me.
May I ask where you went to college? My Spelman sister. I want to describe a scene. David Dallas Jones, a president at Spelman College. In fact, a beloved president, would walk the campus, and he would see a Spelman student, and he would come up to her, and he would say, "Young woman, what is your purpose?" And he didn't mean what course are you taking, what job do you have. He meant what you have asked. What is your purpose? And my answer is, there's really only one purpose. I mean, I should be less dogmatic, but I think the purpose that each of us has is to be of service to others. You know, Dr. King put it far more rhetorically. He said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And there are different ways that we can serve. But I think at the end of every life, you want to be able to say, yes, I climbed. You know, and Mary McLeod Bethune urged us to climb to the top. But she also said, you must be willing to lift others as you climb. And so some, like our mayor, you know, there's just no question about being of service. But I bet you if we went up and down these rows, each of us would be able to say in some way how you are being of service to others. So thank you for the question, my Spelman sister.
Way in the back. Yes, with the glasses. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Good evening. My name is Ebony Rose Wade. I am a doctoral student at Howard University. I also work for BET's Black Girls Rock. I have access to a lot of different agencies and organizations. My basic question is, without taking anything away from the recent trends of African American male initiatives, I oftentimes come off as if my only agenda are African American females, but the only opportunities in terms of preparedness and leadership programs that are granted to me or that I have access to the conversation are for STEM programs. What would you suggest for me how can I come across a different way? By saying African American females, they need the same opportunities as well. But I do not want to take away from the African American male initiatives, but it's becoming a problem.
Yes. So much harm is done by either or. By this, but not that. And for us to focus on the challenges that young African American men have while we ignore women is really shameful. And so I hear your question. How do we understand that if the African American community, like any community, is to move forward, it cannot be by focusing on one sector or one gender alone. When you raise STEM, I have a little word I want to give to you. Each of us here understands the importance of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And particularly, we understand that African Americans and people of color who are in the Latino community, not so much the Asian American community, but also the Native American community, have not really had opportunities to advance in STEM. But here we go again, focusing on one thing and ignoring another. And so those of us in the arts have insisted on STEAM. Put the A in with STEM. Because no matter what the issue or the problem is, science alone, technology alone will rarely solve it until you bring the arts and the humanities, until you bring into the highly technological and scientific arenas the soul of a people. So what do you expect, my sister, having been the president of 2 women's colleges? You know I'm going to agree with you that we cannot ever focus on one part of our community and ignore the other.
What do you think, Barbara?
I think I certainly agree with Johnnetta. I guess maybe I would turn the question back to the audience. What advice would you give the young lady in the back? If only those careers in STEM are what's presented to her, how do you combat that? So I'm asking you a question. Don't you all speak at once?
I recommend that she make a proposal to expand STEM to the area that she recommends. Literally, there's a gap, and she can put together a proposal or a plan to recommend to her stakeholders expanding the initiative. And then I had a question.
Sure.
You got the microphone.
Okay. My question is, we are inundated by information, by all sorts of media outlets, new technology. My question is, how what are your primary sources? What are the primary sources of information that you use to stay on top of critical information that you need on a day-to-day basis? And how did you choose them?
Okay. Barbara.
Yeah, I'm a news junkie, so I'll admit that up front. I probably read 8 newspapers a day, and before I get to the office in the morning, so I start at about 5. I am old-fashioned in that I really love just turning the page on the paper. That's not the way the young folks like to look at that. But my papers at home don't arrive that early, so I have to look at them and read online. And so I do read them online. I have to read the Washington Post because I have to read the Washington Post. But beyond that, it's the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I read Huffington Post. I read Politico. Anything that deals with business and politics, both nationally and locally, I look at that. The other thing that I do is I look at Twitter all day long, because you get a lot of quick news information from Twitter. Now, there's a downside to Twitter because people put a lot of things on there that they should not. But I follow about 30 reporters and 3 or 4 networks. And so you get the story immediately. So I probably spend an hour and a half, 2 hours a day on Twitter. I don't tweet personally, the chamber does, but I'm a stalker. So I stalk all the reporters in watching Twitter all day. And I immediately, when I see a tweet that applies to something that the chamber is doing or the city is doing, I immediately send it to my staff before they even see it. So I really am a news junkie. My TV in the office is on MSNBC all day long, or CNN. Right now I'm getting a little tired of CNN because it's all about the Malaysia plate. It's over and over and over again, nothing new. But we, my husband works from home. We have 5 or 6 TVs in the room. Everyone is on, and it's on the news all day long. So whichever room he walks in, he can get the update on the news. So we perhaps are a little unusual because we are real news junkies at my house.
I want to be consistent with what I just said about the danger in choosing or deciding you can only focus here. What Barbara has said is important. But I also want to suggest, for those of us who are women folk, that there is such value in reading women's literature, especially when you read about the lives of women who are not easily described in the same way that you are. You learn an enormous amount about this Chicana, but you also learn an extraordinary amount about yourself as an African-American woman. There's something in that old-fashioned notion of reading about experiencing someone else's journey that will help you on your own. And so we don't have to choose here. We have to just figure out how we can get all of the news quick, Twitter, Facebook. But every now and then you just need to crawl up in your bed and read a book.
Which actually gets to this question. You are both Energizer bunnies. You have many, many demands on your time, and you will have a new set of demands on your time, but you're both beautifully dressed, beautifully coiffed. You don't look like you've had stress. How do you do this? How do you do that? What's your secret to de-stressing, looking wonderful, Barbara.
Well, thank you for the compliment to both of us, first of all. I think that there are a couple of pleasures that I have. I don't give up my hair appointment every week for anybody. May have to reschedule it, but I go every week. And my nail appointment on Saturdays. Those are just two very sacred things to me, and I make sure that I do that. On the health side, I try to work out. I try 3 or 4 times a week. I have a trainer that I've not used in the past month because I've been transitioning out of the chamber. But we have a health club in the chamber's building, and she would come to the office and beat me to death down in the gym. And so I think that's important. One of the things that when the weather is nice, I do like, I race walk, and I have done that in marathon. And race walking, being outside, is so much nicer than a treadmill. A treadmill is the most boring thing in the world for me. And so, but I will do it and do it longer if I can go outside and get 2 or 3 miles in. A good cardio. Not just, I mean, I would suggest if you don't do any walking, just learn to walk. I mean, just walk. But I like the race walking because it is the cardio and it's not hard on the knees and running. So I try to do those things. Try to eat better, but, I will tell you I fail at that a lot. With the job I've had, I have meetings at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so it's really a little hard to do that. So,
Madam President.
I would second everything that Barbara has said. But, I also would dare to suggest that the 3 of us look the way we look in large measure because we have been so fortunate to have good work to do.
yes.
And when one does not have good work, it's really very hard to be happy. When one has no work at all, it's impossible to be happy. And so this is the plea that those of us who have been fortunate to have work, that we always do what we can to make sure that others will have what is a human right,
Yes.
the right to work.
And part of my work is to say how grateful we are to Johnnetta Cole and to Barbara Lang for a wonderful forum today. Thank you, ladies. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome the Mayor of the District of Columbia and to say once again how very important it is that he decided to sit and listen to what went on here today, because listening is a part of what produces the good ideas, of which he has many. So I'm very delighted to bring Mayor Vincent Gray.
I am so glad that I came in late enough to be able to sit in the back to listen to the wisdom that was imparted here tonight. You know, wasn't this an extraordinary evening? I want to say thanks to Barbara, to Johnnetta, and to Charlene for agreeing to do this. I want to say thanks to a couple of people also, Therese Lowry and Daryl Gorman. It was actually Daryl's idea. He sent me an email one night. He said, why don't we, have you thought about doing something for Women's History Month that would bring together successful women in Washington. And I said, no, I think it's a terrific idea. And so I said, well, make sure you coordinate, with Therese, because we don't want to have us tripping over ourselves. And in fact, he did. And they said, do you have any ideas on who we might ask? And this is the truth. I said, what about Charlene Drew Jarvis? What about Dr. Johnnetta Cole? And what about Barbara Lang? And what you've heard tonight really is, I think, so extraordinary that we should do this on an annual basis. I listened carefully, and, I listened to the STEAM part also, the science, technology, engineering, art. And the art part, I'm glad to say, I just announced that we're going to put another $116 million into education next year. And one of the things that will permit us to do is to bring art to every middle school in the District of Columbia. To me, the absence of diversity in education is relegating one to a level of ignorance, because you really can't make good choices unless you have an exposure to those things that might stimulate it. We were just having, a little conversation in the back, and the person who was sitting next to me was talking about how the arts, the fine arts, the performing arts, had really stimulated her life, her career. She had gone to Howard University, and then I think it was the Santa Monica University thereafter, right? And how it had been such an important part of her life. We I guess, call this successful women. We should just call it successful people, because let some of those roosters come in here and grab at you all, right? I again want to thank you all. And one of the things that struck me, and anybody that will listen, I will talk about early childhood education. And I typically talk about it in the context of what it does to give early opportunities to our children who otherwise might not have them. 90% of brain development takes place by the time a child is 5 years of age. And I'm really proud at this stage to say that we have 70% of our 3-year-olds who go to school all day, every day, and 92% of our 4-year-olds who go to school all day, every day. And as a historical construct, the assumption was that when you have very young children, that women stay home and take care of children while men go out and be the breadwinner. That is one of the worst stereotypes, but there's a lot of truth in that. And I think what we are doing, which is an important role of government to me, and that is to be able to create ways in which we level the playing field. That why should it be that men get the opportunity to go off and do interesting things in terms of work, while, and I don't mean to disparage, raising children, but it's an important function, but one's life shouldn't have to be spent doing that unless they choose to. One should not be relegated to that. And so one of the things I see with what we're trying to do with early childhood education is creating a quality experience so that if families choose to do that, both want to work, it isn't a harrowing experience where you have to worry about what's happening with your child. I am so glad that we've gotten rid of terms like daycare, childcare, and preschool. Preschool we may be stuck with for a while, because I keep saying to people, they say, you're running preschool programs. I said, no, we're not. We're not running preschool programs. We're running school programs, because school is the inherent in school is a quality education. And frankly, it seems to me that this is a way of leveling the playing field, and that is to make sure that women and men together have quality opportunities so that as they have and raise children, they have the support of a society that says we value the contributions of both of you, And we want both of you to be able to have a chance to do what it is that is enriching and rewarding and stimulating to each of you. So I was glad to hear the discussion about very young children and what it means to have to raise young children in a quality experience. We now are putting a lot of money into infant and toddler programs. We just put $11 million more, and next year we'll put $4 million more into serving children who are birth to up to 3 years of age. And the day will come in the very near future, in my opinion, that we will have what people will regard as the most important childhood education program in America. And I think there are people who will come to see it. I was glad to be able to join with Barbara Lang as we did this. When I was the chairman of the council, we did this legislation, and then I got the opportunity to really do what I thought we should do when I became the mayor, and that is to try to have the best quality early childhood education experience in America. It supports families, and it recognizes that women and men alike ought to have the opportunity and the flexibility to do the things that they want to do. Having children and raising children should not be an experience in which one is penalized, feeling like you are constrained from having a stimulating experience. So I really appreciate the fact that you all talked about this, and I really appreciate the fact also, some of you may know that when I arrived at this job, the Commission on Women had been eliminated. Maybe it was because someone thought we had fully arrived with equality. I don't think so, but it was one of the things that I was happy to resurrect, and that is we now have an Office on Women's Policy. We now have, of course, a vibrant, energized, vital Commission on Women here in the District of Columbia. And ladies and gentlemen, don't you think tonight was a great example of how we can benefit mightily from continuing to have this experience? You know, I too am an inveterate reader, and sometimes a lot of nights I don't go home until 12, 1, 2 o'clock. If you get an email from me, I might be sitting in my office sending you one, or a tweet, or whatever the case may be. But I read something recently that, you know, was both discouraging and uplifting at the same time. It was a study that had been done on pay parity between men and women. And there is no state, including the District of Columbia, that has pay parity. In fact, Louisiana was the worst. Women make, I don't know, like 67% of what a man makes in Louisiana. But among those states, and the District of Columbia was considered a state, the state that was the closest to parity was the District of Columbia, because women now make 90% of what men make. The downside is that women make 90% of what men make. The upside is women make 90% of what men make. And our job, it seems to me, is to create an environment within which we will get to the point where there is no distinction between the earning capacity or the earnings of men and women. And so, ladies, people, I want to thank you all again for coming out. It was a wonderful experience to sit here and listen to this tonight. And I think you have created a mandate for us to do this every year. And I have a feeling that we'll be coming back to you all, asking you to continue to do this in the future. Thank you all very much on behalf of the District of Columbia.